What if I told you one of baseball's top prospects never set foot in a draft room? No college stats, no perfect game All-American honors. He wasn't some child prodigy destined for superstardom. In fact, he never even played high school ball. Just raw talent, a big signing bonus, and now a sure lock to debut in the big leagues in the not-too-distant future. This is Leo De Vries, and he's an absolute stud. He's put together a very solid minor league tenure, and quote-unquote very solid might be putting it lightly. Sure, a 248, 356, 412 slash line with 8 bombs and 48 RBIs in high A ball doesn't exactly scream call him up already. I get it. But considering he's still over 2 years from being old enough to go buy a 6-pack of Coors Light at the local 7-Eleven, it's no surprise that he's a consensus top 10 prospect in all of baseball. I should also emphasize that he's playing against guys that are, on average, 4 years older than him, with All-American credentials and/or Division I playing experience. De Vries was born in Azuay, Dominican Republic. He was a top international prospect for the 2024 class and signed with the Padres in January of that year for $4.2 million at just 17 years old. For a guy who's never even left his homeland, that kind of money ain't too bad. After the signing, Baseball America immediately put him as the 99th best prospect in all of baseball. He put up a good campaign in A-ball that year, which catapulted him to the 18th spot on MLB.com's prospect rankings before the 2025 season. And stats aside, looking at his intangibles, it's not hard to see why. He's a 6'1" switch-hitting shortstop at 18 years old, with average to above average grades in all major scouting criteria. His outstanding performance at such a young age earned him a spot in this past July's All-Star Futures game. So when the Padres traded him this past deadline to the Athletics, it was shocking to say the least. And while San Diego acquired elite closer Mason Miller and starting pitcher JP Sears in the deal, many around the industry were confused about how the team could give up on the young prospect so quickly. When looking at it in a vacuum, San Diego is a serious playoff and World Series contender, while the A's are 15 games below 500. Therefore, it makes sense for the A's to sell and get prospects in return, and for the Padres to add potential contributors to the major league roster. In other words, a good team trades with a bad team, and both benefit in some way. But trading the team's number one prospect and third best in all of baseball for a soon-to-be 27-year-old relief arm and an average starter seems very risky. This is not to say that De Vries will be a surefire first-ballot Hall of Famer, but someone with his pedigree at this young of an age is rare to find nowadays. Or is it? The purpose of this video is not to get into specifics and evaluate the trade as a whole, but it does raise an interesting question on how teams value young players and prospects. When a teenager blossoms into a top 10 prospect, this is a goldmine for MLB teams. But how exactly are prospects evaluated and graded? Let me introduce the 20-80 scale. 20 is well below average, 50 is average, and 80 is elite. Every prospect has a grade for each tool on their MLB.com profile. For position players, the tools are hit, power, speed, arm, and field. For pitchers, these are fastball, curveball, slider, changeup, and control. For example, Rafael Devers' defense would be a grade 30, and Shohei Ohtani's power would be an 80. Paul Skeens' fastball would be considered an 80 as well, while Dylan Cease's control would be around a 40. Of course, these grades change over time and are reassessed frequently. In De Vries' case, his grades are as shown, with an overall grade of 60. Let's take his highest graded tool, hitting at grade 60. With this metric, MLB.com essentially ranks it in the same realm as Diamondback shortstop Geraldo Perdomo. Of course, it's not always 100% accurate, and there have actually been many instances where these grades have been completely wrong. Unranked prospects that seem destined for a decade in the minors can end up becoming perennial all-stars, while top 50 prospects may never make it past AA. Nonetheless, it's been the go-to system for beat writers and scouts to evaluate and appropriately assess value to prospects. That being said, the tools aren't the only variables that major league front offices and executives consider. Factors like current level and affiliated ball, age, both counting and advanced stats, and any off-field issues are all considered. And there are two main ways that teams can acquire amateur players: the annual MLB draft and international free agency, also known as the international signing period. We'll start with the draft first. There are 20 rounds and occurs during All-Star Week in July every year. Eligible prospects include high school players from the US, Canada, and Puerto Rico, college players who are at least 21 years old or have completed at least their junior year, and junior college players regardless of their year. The draft is essentially limited to US and Canadian players. Each pick has a slot value with the amount of money set by MLB that is recommended for that draft pick signing bonus, and each team has a draft bonus pool for the first 10 rounds. Here are the top 10 bonus pools from this year's draft. Almost always, teams will give out the highest signing bonus to their first pick from the bonus pool. But there's some strategy behind it. Because the slot value is only a recommended amount, teams can either go over or below the number. For example, the first overall pick from this year's draft, Eli Willits, signed with the Nationals for about $3 million less than his assigned slot value. Don't worry, he still signed a then record-breaking signing bonus given to a high school player. Funny enough, it was broken just seconds after by the 4th overall pick Ethan Holiday, but I digress. There's a variety of reasons of why teams choose to do this, but the logical reason is to give later picks more money so prospects have a higher incentive to sign, rather than play college ball or spend another year in school. Lastly, teams can distribute the money however they want as long as they don't spend more than the designated draft bonus pool. Now, let's flip to the international side, the route that brought Leo De Vries into the spotlight. This is where Ronald Acuna Jr., Shohei Ohtani, and Fernando Tatis Jr. came from, international signing. It occurs year-round, except for a 1-month break between December 15th and January 15th. Eligibility includes players that are not subject to the MLB draft and have never played high school baseball. Typically, these prospects come from Latin America, but in some cases from Japan, Korea, and other parts of the world. For Japan and Korea, the rules are unique if the prospect has experience in the KBO or NPB. I dove deeper into that in a previous video, so I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in checking that out. But let's say a 17-year-old prospect, born in Mexico, moves to the United States to play 1 season of high school baseball. At that point, he is no longer considered an international prospect, and he'd be subjected to the aforementioned draft rules. Players in this category must be between 16 and 25 years old. Just like in the draft, teams have a designated international bonus pool that they can use to sign international amateurs. The size of these pools depends on market size and it varies from year to year. So small teams like the A's and Brewers usually get more, while teams like the Dodgers and Yankees get less. One little nugget of this pool is that teams can actually use international money in trades with other clubs, unlike draft pool money. Nonetheless, the system of allocating the money here works the same. Teams can spend however they choose on international prospects, as long as they stay under the designated slot. In 2023, a 16-year-old catching prospect by the name of Ethan Salas signed with the Padres for $5.6 million. The signing bonus made up an outstanding 96.1% of the Padres' pool for that year. If an international prospect as highly regarded as Salas is available, many teams will use an overwhelming majority of their pool for the given year to sign that player. In De Vries' case, his signing bonus made up about 64.4% of the Padres' pool for 2024. Theoretically, teams can't spend more than the designated pool, but they would face some sanctions and restrictions on future international spending. So the question begs, which is better for teams? Is it the draft, or is it international signing? Let's take a look at the pros and cons of each. And again, players can't choose in theory. If they're from the US, Canada, or Puerto Rico, they enter through the draft. If they're from anywhere else, teams need to sign them using international bonus money. With the draft, the pros are pretty convincing. For one, data and statistics are collected through every possible measure in high school and college ball. Not just traditional stats like batting average and fastball velocity, but advanced metrics such as spin rate, launch angle, exit velo, and bat speed. This is made possible by the fact that nearly every major college in the United States has access to TrackMan, Rapsodo, Blast Motion, and Hawkeye to get data on their players. Why am I saying this? Because MLB teams already have significant advanced data to evaluate prospects, without ever having to see them play live. College and even high school ball is increasingly more accessible through scouting videos on YouTube and major networks like ESPN covering the College World Series. And most of the time, the players are closer to being MLB ready and can make their big league debut within a couple of years. Additionally, slotted bonuses keep spending predictable, and teams don't need to make too many hard decisions when handing out signing bonuses to draftees. Most of them are satisfied earning nearly 8-figure bonuses right out of school. Now, there's also a few cons to the draft. The prospects are older than the average international amateur. Therefore, it's essentially a shorter clock on the prospect to make it to the big leagues. If a 21-year-old player drafted in the first round out of UCLA hasn't earned his way to MLB by his age 27 season, it's a bit concerning, as the prospect could land in bust territory, signaling a wasted draft pick by the organization. Additionally, in later rounds of the draft, prospects become a lot more limited, as high school players drafted after the 10th round usually opt not to sign and play college ball, and college players have a shorter leash than a top 5-round pick. Not to mention, first-round draft picks almost always sign on for significantly more than international prospects. Moving on to the other side. In regards to international signees, the pros are also plentiful. For one, players are signed at a very young age, often before they even turn 18. Teams have access to younger, higher upside talent and can build relationships with the prospects years before they ever potentially get called up to the show. Talent in Latin America specifically is everywhere. And while I hate to point out the elephant in the room, the quality of life and economy in many Latin American countries is far below levels in the United States. Therefore, many players see the opportunity to sign as a step towards a better life for not just themselves, but their families as well. Teams can sign as many international prospects as they want, unlike the draft where they are limited to around 20. Most of the time, signing bonuses given out to international players are significantly less than what is given out to draft picks, and there truly can be some diamonds in the rough by doing this. Jose Altuve, who is widely considered a surefire future Hall of Famer, signed with the Astros at 18 years old for a mere $15,000. Considering he's now playing out a contract worth $125 million, I'd say the Astros scored here. Because of their age, prospects in this category tend to have a lot more leeway on their path to MLB, as it is very common for them to spend half a decade plus in the minors before ever making their debut. But like the draft, there are cons. Unlike draft-eligible players, there's essentially no performance data on international prospects, particularly those that come from Latin America. Japan and Korea have the same level of data as teams in MLB, but considering the fact that most teams use international bonus pool money to sign Latino players, this can be a bit tricky. Team scouting these prospects need to largely rely on the eye tests and limited data from players at such a young age. Again, a good portion of these prospects are barely able to legally drive in the United States at the time of signing. So while these prospects tend to have higher upside than their draft-eligible counterparts, the lack of performance data means that teams are banking on the prospects' development and progression. There can also be a risk of burnout for the prospects, and most of the time, this means returning back home to work low-paying jobs. Not to mention the legality of these deals can sometimes make matters difficult. There has been several cases where international prospects forge birth certificates and lie about their age. Last year, 14-year-old Dominican prospect Cesar Alta Garcia had a verbal agreement with the Padres to sign for $4 million once he was eligible. Well, it came out that Alta Garcia was already 19 years old at the time, and he lied about his age. As such, the deal fell through. So what's better for an organization? Personally, I'd slightly lean toward the draft. It's safer, with more data, and fewer unknowns. But that's just me. To be realistic, it's not one or the other, but how you balance the two. The best organizations blend both systems. Look at the Dodgers or Rays. They're smart in the draft, and they're bold internationally. While the draft gives teams safer, more established prospects, international signing lets you grab high-upside teenagers before anyone else can. Looking here, we see this chart from MLB.com's most recent top 100 prospect rankings. Leading the charge is the Mariners, with 8 top 100 prospects, but notice how 3 of them were acquired via the international signing period. In total, 31 out of the top 100 were signed as international amateur free agents, which goes to show that while draftees typically end up making 2/3 of any top 100 ranking, international prospects hold their fair share. In fact, 4 out of the top 10 are international players, those being De Vries, of course, Sebastian Walcott, Jesus Made, and Samuel Basayo. These are updated frequently, so only time will tell where distribution stands in the next rankings. Leo De Vries shows what's possible when teams invest internationally and hit big. They can stay with the organization and develop into a big leaguer, or be traded early on to acquire MLB-ready talent. But for every De Vries, there are 10 others who don't make it. And that's what makes MLB prospects so fascinating. That's the game. That's the gamble. And may fortune favor the bold. Alright, thanks for watching the video. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. I had a fun time making this video, so if you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new here. You guys really seem to like the baseball video, so I'll probably be doing more of that in the future. But anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you soon.